I never expected to meet my future wife in a backyard surrounded by champagne flutes and fairy lights. My name is Liam. I'm 34, I live in Annapolis, Maryland, and I plan supply chains for aerospace components. Basically, I spend a lot of time talking to manufacturers about timelines and tolerances. Not exactly party conversation. But that night, I had something better. I had just bought a 1983 Morgan sailboat. A fixer-upper. Something that made me feel like I was finally doing something with my life outside of work. I was standing near the grill with a paper plate of shrimp skewers when she walked up to me. Mia. Wavy chestnut hair, boho dress, glass of Prosecco in one hand, perfectly staged laugh in the other. She smiled like we already knew each other. You're the one with the boat, right? She asked. I blinked. Yeah. You heard about that. She shrugged, swaying slightly like the wind had nudged her. Only thing worth hearing about at this party, honestly. We talked for the next 2 hours. She told me she was a freelance interior stylist, mostly boutique spaces, creative concept work, she said, and I told her I just moved into a tiny one-bedroom above a bait shop because it was walking distance to the harbor. Instead of laughing at that, she leaned in. I think it's cool you're not trying to impress anyone. There's something raw about that, she said. I didn't realize it then, but that was the first hook. Mia made frugality sound romantic. Made simplicity sound intentional. And I, the guy patching rusted keel plates on weekends and living off bar food and oatmeal, felt seen. We started dating a few weeks later. At first, she loved the whole DIY aesthetic. She took dreamy photos of my boat, ran her fingers along the peeling teak like it was vintage art. Said my apartment had character and posted it on her story with captions like living simple, living free. I liked her enthusiasm. I liked that she didn't mind the mess. But the tone shifted pretty quickly. By month 3, she was commenting on my car. Babe, this thing looks like it sells tacos on the side, she joked one day, eyeing the faded Ford Focus I'd driven since grad school. She started sending me Zillow listings, 2-bedroom lofts with exposed brick and rent I'd have to take on a roommate to afford. We could make this a real home, she'd say. I thought it was ambition. I thought she wanted us to build something. I ignored the pit in my stomach every time she made a face at my budget dinners. I laughed off her teasing about my college buddy Rob, who fixed HVACs and drank Miller Lite like water. I interpreted it all as motivation. She was pushing me to level up. What guy wouldn't want that? When we got married 18 months later, it didn't feel rushed. At least not to me. Mia's parents were beaming through the whole event, acting like royalty. They brought in a string quartet and called it our gift to the couple, but the invoice came to me. I paid for the tent rental, the custom calligraphy invites, and the catering from a farm-to-table chef Mia followed on Instagram. Her parents made speeches about bringing families together. My name came up once in passing. It should have bothered me more. But I was in love. I believed we were a team. And I thought love meant not keeping score. I didn't know back then that she'd been keeping one all along. The first real argument we had was about the boat. Or more specifically, about the title. Mia came into the living room one night holding a glass of white wine and a stack of papers she'd printed from the DMV website. Can we talk about putting me on the ownership? She said casually, like she was asking to split a streaming subscription. I looked up from the laptop. Ownership of what? The boat, she said. I mean, we're married now. We're building a life. Doesn't it make sense for it to be ours? I blinked. You didn't put any money into it. She smiled like I was being naive. Yeah, but I've invested in the aesthetic. And we both use it. I wanted to argue, wanted to say that I'd bled into that fiberglass hull, had missed 2 weekends of rest to sand and seal the dam deck. But instead, I said I'd think about it. She took that as a yes. 3 days later, she posted a picture of herself sitting cross-legged on the boat, captioned, "Home is where we drop anchor together." From there, things escalated. Our apartment, originally a 1-bedroom walk-up with decent light and a narrow balcony, became Mia's renovation canvas. First came her office. She needed space for creative consulting clients, even though she hadn't booked one since the wedding. She ordered a vintage desk, velvet chair, and painted the walls in this dusty rose color that made the room feel like a boutique perfume shop. Next was the patio. She hired a landscaper to build out a miniature herb garden and ordered ceramic lanterns that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. I didn't argue. Not out loud. But I felt it, this slow creep of change that didn't involve me, only my bank account. Then she quit her job. It's time, she told me over quinoa bowls one Tuesday. I've outgrown boutique work. I'm launching my own label. I didn't even know she had a label. Suddenly we were paying a web developer in Vancouver to build an e-commerce site. We were shipping out sample mood boards to influencers she'd met at networking brunches. She booked a photo shoot with a lifestyle photographer and rented a yacht for a brand narrative backdrop. I said yes to all of it. To make up for the expenses, I took on extra shifts. I started doing side consulting for an aerospace subcontractor based in Charleston. I'd work till 6 at my regular job, eat a sandwich in the car, then dive into spreadsheets until 11. Some nights, I didn't even make it to bed. I just passed out on the couch. She noticed, but not in the way I hoped. "You look tired," she said one morning, sipping her oat milk latte. "Maybe stop hanging around Rob so much. All he does is drink and complain. That kind of energy drains people." I wanted to tell her that Rob was the one who helped me move our sofa up 4 flights of stairs. That he showed up with pizza the night my dad died and sat on the floor with me until 2 a.m. I wanted to defend him. Instead, I nodded. Bit by bit, she pulled me away from everything that grounded me. My friends, my routines, even the boat. "Let's sell it," she said one day. "We barely use it and that money could really go into the brand." She said it like we had a brand. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. She started mocking my job, calling it glorified supply babysitting. She rolled her eyes when I brought up stress at work, saying I should be grateful for a stable salary. All the while, she kept asking for more. More funding, more upgrades, more exposure. I told myself it was a rough patch. That all marriages had trade-offs. But deep down, I was beginning to feel like a tenant in my own life, paying rent on someone else's dream. It was supposed to be a work trip. Just a low-key weekend at my old mentor's countryside villa, part of an aerospace summit for logistics leads in the mid-Atlantic. I got the invite because I'd helped restructure a regional supplier matrix the month before. It wasn't glamorous. Half the people there would be in polo shirts and khakis talking about torque tolerances, but it felt like recognition. I told Mia about it over dinner, expecting her to roll her eyes. Instead, she looked intrigued. "Are the wives invited?" she asked. "I mean, yeah. It's not super formal, but they usually bring partners." "Perfect," she said, smiling. "We could use a getaway." She meant she could use a new audience. The moment we pulled up to the estate, her whole demeanor shifted. The place was sprawling vine-covered archways, an old stone patio, string lights coiled through the trees. Engineers in linen shirts sipped bourbon under umbrellas, their wives clustered near the pool in perfectly coordinated sundresses and expensive sandals. Mia took one look and lit up like a chandelier. By the time we reached the patio, she was already chatting up a couple from Roanoke. He was a design lead at Northrop. She was some kind of lifestyle blogger. Mia laughed too loudly, complimented shoes she hadn't even looked at, dropped the word aesthetic 3 times before we even got our drinks. I tried to hang back, let her mingle. At dinner, I sat beside my mentor, Cal, and his wife of 30 years. We were swapping shop stories when I noticed Mia across the courtyard with a small circle of women and a couple of their husbands. She was animated, wine glass in hand, gesturing toward the fire pit. I started walking over just to say hi. Then I heard her voice. "He's sweet," she was saying. "But God, he's suffocating sometimes. It's like, I don't know. I miss my ex. At least he understood creative freedom." Someone let out a sympathetic sigh. Someone else laughed like it was a relatable sitcom moment. My stomach dropped. She didn't see me. I turned around and walked back to the bar. I stood there for what felt like 10 minutes, my hand clenched around a sweating glass of seltzer, not really tasting it. That one line kept playing in my head. "I miss my ex," said like she missed a favorite brunch spot. I didn't go back to the table. I told Kel I wasn't feeling well and slipped out early. In the car that night, she was glowing. "Everyone loved me," she said, kicking off her heels. "And you have to admit, that little cheese board by the fire? Heaven." I nodded, kept my hands on the wheel. My mind was spinning. Not just because of what she'd said, but because of how easy it had been for her to say it. Like I wasn't even real. Like I was just some placeholder husband she'd grown out of. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't say anything at all. But something broke. Quietly. Internally. And I knew from that point on I was done pretending we were on the same side. I didn't tell anyone for a few weeks. Not even Rob. I just sat with the weight of it, the way she'd said suffocating, the way her face looked relaxed when she talked about missing her ex. There wasn't a flicker of guilt in her voice that night. Just entitlement. But once I finally admitted to myself what I was dealing with, I knew I needed help. Victor was my old roommate from college. We'd shared a crumbling 2-bedroom in Fairfax back when we were both scraping by on internships and frozen pizza. Now he was a partner at a corporate law firm downtown, specializing in high-net-worth divorce litigation. The kind of guy who wore cufflinks and said things like, "Disclosure timing is leverage." I texted him one night. "You still help people blow up their marriages?" He replied in under a minute. Got something worth blowing up? We met for drinks 2 nights later at a bar he insisted was low profile. It was the kind of place where whiskey came in cut glass and every stool had lumbar support. I'll say this, he said after I gave him the rundown. You married a branding campaign. I thought I married a person, I muttered. Same thing to her, he said. So here's the play: you don't argue. You don't confront. You document. Quietly. No warning shots. That's when the gears started turning. The first thing I did was open a new bank account under a credit union with no ties to our existing finances. Then I rerouted all upcoming payments from my side consulting gig. Instead of hitting the shared household account, the money now went straight to my name, no paper trail Mia would see. Next, I installed a small voice recorder in the bookshelf. Legal in our state as long as one party consents, and I consented every single time. I told Victor, she doesn't yell. She just chips away. Verbal abuse isn't always loud, he said. But if it's consistent, it's evidence. So I recorded. I captured her talking down to me like I was a delivery guy who got her order wrong. You don't get design, she snapped one morning after I asked if we could hold off on buying a second bar cart for her office. That's why you work with machines and not people. Another time, she rolled her eyes at a voicemail from my mom and muttered, we really need to phase out the small-town relatives. They're like expired coupons. I recorded the spending too, her giving out my Amex info to a photographer/florist she'd found on Instagram, buying 3 versions of the same designer handbag for the grid, saying it would be reimbursed once the brand takes off. The brand, by the way, had yet to make a single sale. And then came the messages. Mia started demanding an old flame, Tyler, a photographer she used to intern with. It started with flame emojis under his travel pics. Then came messages like, remember Tulum? You always got me back then. She didn't know I had access to our shared iCloud account. She didn't know screenshots were piling up in a private folder marked Boat Manual. She kept asking me for money, event production, travel to a networking escape in Asheville, drone footage for a lookbook. And I kept saying yes. Kept smiling. I was building the case. Layer by layer. Victor checked in once a week. You ready yet? Almost, I'd say. Because when I walked away, I didn't want a scene. I didn't want an argument. I wanted silence. The kind that only comes after a storm that never saw you coming. It started with a cappuccino and a lie. Mia had just returned from a brunch downtown, glowing with that post-photo op high. She dropped her sunglasses on the counter and kissed my cheek like she hadn't called me a mid-tier provider 3 nights ago after I said we couldn't afford a second videographer for her retreat. I've got something exciting, she said, sliding her phone across the kitchen island. On it was a flyer, the Maison-style collective retreat, Palm Springs, limited guests, unlimited exposure. I was personally invited, she said, which I doubted. Only 5 stylists. We collaborate, pitch brand concepts, shoot in designer villas. It's a career accelerator. How much? I asked, already bracing. Not much. Flights, 2 nights, a stylist's contribution for materials, like $1,200 total. I paused just long enough for her to fill the silence. I know it's a stretch. But this could be it. The launch pad. I promise, once the line picks up, I'll pay it all back. I looked her in the eyes and smiled. Do it. She blinked. Wait, really? Yeah. Book it. She squealed, wrapped her arms around me, then grabbed her laptop like her life depended on it. The next 48 hours were a blur of outfit planning, online orders, and phone calls. She packed 3 carry-ons, took a car service to the airport, and sent me a boomerang from the terminal with the caption, on the grind, but make it luxe. As soon as I saw her flight status switch to departed, I got to work. I had already arranged the storage unit. A month earlier, I found one 5 miles away, climate-controlled, discreet, open till midnight. I took half-days off from work under the guise of supplier meetings and started moving boxes little by little, photo albums, tools, my guitar, the backup hard drive she didn't know existed. That morning, I made the final push. By noon, I had cleared my side of the closet, my books, the documents from the safe. I left the bed and some shared furniture. The goal wasn't pettiness, it was escape. I called the locksmith next. He was a pro, no small talk, no judgment. Within 30 minutes, the locks were changed and the building's front desk updated the fob access. Then I met Victor. He was waiting at the courthouse with the paperwork already filed, divorce petition, emergency financial protection order, asset freeze, and legal notices. He handed me a manila folder with a slight grin. She's going to scream, he said. I know, I replied. But she won't find me. By evening, I was checked into a short-term rental above a bakery. It smelled like cinnamon and didn't have her voice echoing off the walls. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the silence. It felt like breathing for the first time in months. Somewhere, Mia was laughing over cocktails, talking about her brand. By the time she landed, her keys wouldn't work. Her card would be declined. Her home, our home, would be missing me entirely. And for once, I didn't owe her a single explanation. She was locked out for less than 5 minutes before the first call came through. I watched it buzz across my burner phone screen, MIA mobile, but I didn't answer. I sat there in the rental's kitchenette, drinking coffee from a chipped mug and staring out at the bakery's back alley. She left 3 voicemails in a row. The first was confusion. "Hey babe, I think the lock's jammed or something. Can you call me back?" The second had a bite. "Liam, this isn't funny. I'm standing outside in heels with luggage. Pick up the damn phone." The third was full fury. "You're out of your mind. You think you can just change the locks like I don't live here? You better call me back or I swear to God." Then she switched to texts. Then emails. Then DMs. By nightfall, her tone flipped again. She sent a message that just said, "We don't have to turn this into a war. Let's just talk. Please." But I'd heard her version of talk before. It always meant, you talk, I dismiss, and then you do what I want anyway. She called Victor's office the next day, left a voicemail so dramatic it made the paralegal roll her eyes. "He's having a breakdown," she claimed. "He's not in his right mind. This is abandonment." Victor sent her a standard legal notice of communication limits. Then came the stories. I started hearing from mutual acquaintances, some from my job, a few from the sailing club, telling me Mia was saying I'd snapped, that I was unstable, that I had disappeared without warning. She said I'd been depressed, possibly suicidal, and she was worried sick. But Mia underestimated one thing, the paper trail. Victor had already distributed the evidence packet, screenshots, expense records, audio files, even the private messages to Tyler. He didn't send it to everyone. Just the right people. The ones Mia relied on for image. Her PR friend? Radio silent. Her influencer contact? Unfollowed. Even the retreat girls stopped reposting her photos. People started comparing notes. They remembered the cash advances, the red flags. One guy from a shared friend group told me, "Man, I didn't want to believe it, but, yeah, she always looked right past you." I never said a word publicly. Never corrected the rumors. But when the silence from her network began growing louder than her lies, I knew it was working. Mia's world didn't fall apart all at once. It cracked at the edges, quietly, socially, until she realized no one was rushing to hold it together for her anymore. Mia showed up to court wearing beige. I don't know why that detail stuck with me, but it did. Beige blouse, beige skirt, beige flats. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun, no jewelry except the thin chain she wore during her yoga phase. She looked neutral, like someone trying to audition for empathy. I didn't look at her long, just long enough to confirm she was still playing the role. She walked in beside a lawyer I didn't recognize, tall, thin, suit too sharp for a local case. Her parents trailed behind her. Her mom wore big sunglasses inside. Her dad had that tight-lipped expression of a man realizing things were about to get expensive. Victor leaned toward me. "They brought in a Manhattan guy," he whispered. "Interesting. Expensive move for a losing case." The judge, an older woman with a gray bob and reading glasses, started things off firmly. "No theatrics. Just facts." Mia's lawyer opened with a narrative. It was almost impressive in its spin. My client was blindsided. She came home from a legitimate business trip to find herself locked out of her residence. Her accounts frozen, and her belongings tampered with. She has suffered emotional distress and financial destabilization due to Mr. Rowe's impulsive behavior. He even threw in a line about malicious abandonment under the guise of financial strategy. I could practically hear Mia's voice behind it. Victor didn't blink. "Your Honor," he said calmly, placing the evidence binder on the table. "We'll be presenting a detailed timeline, including documented financial misappropriation, verbal mistreatment, and preliminary plans by Mrs. Rowe to liquidate assets without disclosure to the primary provider, Mr. Rowe." He slid the binder toward the judge. "This includes screenshots of direct messages, audio recordings of belittling and deceitful behavior, and expense logs funded entirely by the petitioner. Additionally, we have communication showing Mrs. Rowe's attempts to rekindle an emotional affair while using marital funds to finance a personal brand with no revenue." The judge raised an eyebrow. "An emotional affair?" Victor flipped to the mark tab. Instagram DMs. Sent while the couple were still cohabitating. With an ex-partner. She refers to him as someone who understands her better. I didn't watch Mia's face. I didn't need to. I could hear her shifting in her chair, see her lawyer pause for half a second before clearing his throat. And the financial records? Victor nodded. Itemized. She charged nearly $11,000 to the shared account in the last 90 days, all for personal branding, dresses, photo shoots, travel expenses, influencer kickbacks. All with zero return. Mia's lawyer tried to pivot, claiming that she was a creative professional entitled to invest in her business, and that emotional stress had led to blurred boundaries. The judge didn't buy it. Blurred boundaries do not override contractual obligations, she said, flipping through the pages. Nor do they justify deliberate concealment of spending or messaging an ex while married. She turned to Mia. You are not entitled to alimony. Not under these circumstances. Mia's mouth opened slightly, like she hadn't processed what was just said. The judge continued. Your access to joint accounts will remain frozen. Any future legal fees will be your responsibility. The petitioner, Mr. Rowe, has demonstrated thorough and lawful conduct during this separation. Victor handed her the final page. Liam Rowe's affidavit, signed and dated. Anything else? The judge asked. No, Your Honor, Victor replied. That'll do. When the gavel came down, it was like a gate slamming shut. Mia stood there, frozen. Her lawyer quietly gathered his papers. Her parents whispered furiously behind her. And I just stood, still and silent, like I had been planning to do all along. For the first time in months, everything was exactly where it belonged. It started with a text I almost didn't open. Mia, hey, I know you don't want to hear from me, but my mom's sick. We're dealing with a lot right now. Just thought you should know. I stared at the screen for a while, then replied, Liam, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope she recovers quickly. Nothing else. No questions. No warmth. That should have been the end of it. But with Mia, nothing ends where it's supposed to. A few days later, she texted again. I've had to move out of my parents' house. Things are hard financially. I'm trying to get back on my feet. Would you consider helping with just a few essentials? I didn't answer. That night, she emailed me. A full essay about letting go of pride. About how she'd learned a lot. About how she didn't expect anything, but maybe we could talk as humans. The subject line said, no expectations, just hope. Victor had warned me, there will be a soft phase. That's how people like Mia re-enter. Never with a demand. Always with a story. Still, a part of me, a part that hadn't fully hardened yet, thought maybe she meant it. Maybe the fallout had shaken something loose. So I replied, Liam, I'm glad you're trying to rebuild. I genuinely wish you well. She waited 2 days before following up with, do you ever think about what we had? That's when I knew it was starting again. The messages came steadily after that. Little updates, nostalgic references, questions like, would you ever consider talking in person? I still have your navy sweater. Smells like the boat. Remember the rainstorm that night? Then the first real ask. I'm going through something personal. I could use a friend. I miss having someone who understands me. Just company. No strings. It wasn't subtle. She wanted me to be the safety net again, only this time without the label. A companion. A sponsor. A fallback. I didn't reply. 3 hours later, she sent a photo of her dinner. Boxed ramen in a scratched ceramic bowl, with the caption, reality. An hour after that. I'm sorry. For all of it. I didn't realize how much I relied on you until I lost you. The next morning, she sent a voice note. Her voice low, vulnerable, rehearsed. I still love you, Liam. Even if I didn't know how to show it. Maybe we could find a different kind of love. Something new. I played it once. Deleted it. Then blocked her number. That night, I sat on the balcony of my rental watching sailboats move like shadows across the bay. There was no anger left in me. No sadness either. Just clarity. She wasn't reaching for me. She was reaching for the version of me who paid for everything and never asked why. And that version of me no longer existed. 2 weeks passed with radio silence. Then Victor called me late one afternoon while I was reviewing specs for a payload system. She's violating the NDA, he said bluntly. I set down my pen. How? She's been talking. A lot. Claims she's telling her truth, whatever that means. We've got reports from 3 separate contacts that she's spreading a story about you stealing money, emotionally neglecting her, even threatening her safety. I sighed, already tired. She's even calling your old boss. That caught my attention. What? Left a voicemail with his assistant. Said she was your wife, concerned about your mental health, and needed to give them important context about your behavior. She's unhinged, I muttered. Victor didn't disagree. That's not the legal term, but yeah. The good news is one of those calls was recorded. He sent it to me that night. It was short, about 40 seconds, but enough. Mia's voice was calm, coated in sugar. I just thought you should be aware, Liam's not in a good place right now. He's been erratic, possibly even manic. I know you're his employer, and I respect that, but someone needs to intervene before something happens. She made it sound like I was one bad day from lighting my desk on fire. Victor filed a cease and desist the next morning and followed it with a formal warning for NDA violation. We requested digital logs from social media platforms, and within 48 hours the damage became visible. The fashion brand that had reposted her retreat content removed the entire highlight reel. A home decor blog took down an interview they'd published just days earlier. One of her few remaining sponsorships, a mid-tier jewelry label, cut ties completely and announced a pause in collaboration. Even the influencer friends she used to tag religiously went quiet. No more fire emojis, no more DMs. She tried to spin it, claiming she was taking time offline to heal. But I knew the truth. She had burned every bridge trying to set fire to mine. The final straw came when one of her past clients, someone I'd never met, sent me a LinkedIn message. Hey, I just wanted to say I saw what she tried to do. A few of us have been comparing stories. We're glad you got out. Thought you should know you're not alone. That message sat with me longer than it should have. Because for the first time it wasn't just about surviving her. It was about being seen clearly by people who hadn't bought the packaging. I moved into a loft above a print shop on the north side of town. Exposed beams, tall windows, not much furniture. Just enough space to breathe. No curated color palettes. No throw pillows labeled bliss. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. The job changed too. I left my old firm a month after the court finalized everything. Took a position at a boutique aerospace startup out in Bethesda. Smaller team, leaner operations, but the people were sharp and the work actually excited me again. We designed custom launch components for private satellites, real stuff, built from scratch, not just shifting parts around on spreadsheets. Most mornings I walked to work, even on cold days. I liked the rhythm of it. Coffee in hand, breeze off the river, no one waiting to ask if I remembered to Venmo a brand photographer. I started sailing again, too. The boat had been in dry dock for months, but I pulled her out and scrubbed her down myself. There was something cleansing about it, washing off the rust, repainting the name. I renamed her Quiet Exit. It felt honest. That's where I met Emma. She was on the next slip over, trying to fix a busted bilge pump on her dad's old cruiser. I offered a hand, expecting her to wave me off. Instead, she said, if you get it working, I'll trade you 2 beers and a story that'll make you feel better about your worst day. It was the first fair deal I'd had in a long time. Emma was the kind of person who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. A consultant by trade, pragmatic by nature. She didn't post about her wins, she just earned them. We started slow. No big declarations. No performance. One night, I told her everything. Not just about Mia, but about how long I'd let myself be invisible in my own life. She didn't try to fix it. She just nodded and said, sounds like you did the hardest thing, you left the script. And that stuck with me. Mia's last known update came through a mutual acquaintance. She was working part-time retail at a high-end home decor store in Georgetown. The kind of place where you paid $200 for a throw blanket and still felt like you were being judged for your shoes. Fitting. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't wish her well either. I just didn't care. And maybe that was the real freedom, not starting over, not finding new love, not even winning in court. It was knowing I'd finally stopped being the guy who made himself smaller just so someone else could feel bigger. This version of my life didn't need approval. It just needed peace. And I had it.